Yeah. Siege. Riley. Taz. Yeah. Set me free and give me death, there ain't no other choices. When I lay down to go to sleep, I keep on hearing voices. Little whispers in my head, man, is you fake or loyal? Why no water, that designer, baby, pick your poison. These little demons living underneath my bed, creeping. Know the real, monster lives above them all, sleeping. That subtle breathing in your closet every single evening. Thought you never see me again, looks can be deceiving. When they hear the sound of the drum, they'll be saying, oh Lord, here they come. Yeah, here we come. Here we come. Here we come. Here we come.
Okay guys, it is here, it is here. The latest $99 bait caster from Shimano. Probably the second most anticipated reel that they showed off at iCast. And this is a very important reel for Shimano, and I think probably even more important than the Corrado DC, simply because, you know, I'm sure they sell a lot more $99 reels than they do $250 reels. So there we go. Okay, so it's got a nice blue box, SLX 150HG, and these came in a lot sooner than I thought they would. Tackle Warehouse kept showing December as a expected arrival date, so now you know that don't really trust those dates because they can change just like that. Okay, of course instructions, and of course Shimano's come in bubble wrap. You can already see that blue through the bubble wrap. And of course oil. Okay, so let's check this thing out. I can't remember the last time, if ever, if Shimano had a reel with blue accents. Wow, let's take a look at that. This is nicer than I thought it would be. Now Shimano released a very slickly edited video showing this reel off with a couple of young kids, so obviously that was their target demographic. But the blue on the camera looks different than the blue off camera. It looks almost like a turquoise. So I don't know if that's going to pick up in the camera or not, but I'm going to let you guys take a good look at this thing. It is pretty small. There's the controversial badge right there. Alright, so I'm gonna play around with this thing for a few minutes, jot some notes down as usual, and yeah, I'll get back to you. Okay guys, when I pulled this thing out of the box, it never really struck me how small this reel is. Now Shimano touts this as being 20% smaller than the outgoing Canon, and I believe they've hit their mark. This thing may be the smallest reel in production today, and let me show you just how small this thing is. Now I don't have a Canon, but of course I have a Casitas, which shares the exact same frame and body. And the Casitas is a small reel, but as you can see next to the SLX, it is noticeably wider and a little bit longer. And let's look at the side profile here. The SLX looks to be at least a couple of millimeters shorter or lower than even the Casitas. This thing is small. Now let's compare it to the latest tiny reel from Daiwa, which we thought was small. Here's the CG80, which was featured in the last video. Now let's stick it up to the SLX. This thing looks huge compared to this. This is noticeably wider, maybe a little bit longer, and looks to be a little bit taller as well. And this is supposed to be the smallest, most palmable reel in the Daiwa lineup. Now let's take a look at it compared to another $99 reel competitor, the very popular Revo X. Now the Revo X, you may have thought it was small, but compared to this SLX, this thing is huge. It's much wider. It may be a little bit shorter. The Revo X is shaped like a square, while this is shaped like a rectangle. And yeah, the SLX, once again, is lower. So yeah, the Revo X looks monstrous compared to this SLX. So let's compare it to what used to be Shimano's smallest reel, and that is the Corrado 70. Now they're pretty close, but it looks to me that the SLX is a little bit shorter and maybe a tad bit thinner, or not as wide as the Corrado 70. They look about maybe a little bit lower for the SLX. It's hard to tell, but I did mount this on a rod and it is super comfortable. It's got this flat side, and one thing to note is a lot of people thought that this was pretty much just a Corrado K frame and body. That's actually incorrect. I'll show you guys compared to the Corrado K. The Corrado K makes this thing look even smaller, and this is a small reel. As you can tell, they are very different. Design language is similar, but this is an entirely new frame and body, and for now it's the only one that has this frame and body in the Shimano lineup. So this is a brand new reel. Okay guys, so I'm gonna go over the specs real quick for all you guys that are too lazy to look it up online for yourselves. Now once again, this is a $99 reel, and this time around Shimano has chosen to give it an aluminum frame and graphite side plates. So if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, this may be the first $99 baitcaster from Shimano that has an aluminum frame. Now if I'm wrong about that, let me know in the comments. Tell me which baitcaster had an aluminum frame for 99 bucks before. Now this is sporting a 90mm handle, and it looks to be, if not the same, or very similar to the Corrado K handle. It may not be quite as thick though. Now it does have these super comfortable, super grippy Corrado K knobs, which are huge for being a $99 reel. Now it's got a graphite drag star that clicks. Very precise micro clicks for the drag star. Typical Shimano swept design. Now it's got an aluminum spool tension or cast control cap, but it comes as no surprise, it does not click. It is very smooth to turn though. Now I did check under this cap. There is no metal insert under there like the CG80 has, but it is still very smooth to turn. Now this thing has only 4 bearings. 3 ball bearings and 1 roller bearing. And that should come as no surprise. Shimano's never been one to just absolutely stack their reels with bearings just to make it look good on paper. But where they put the bearings is where it counts. Now this has the standard 11-pound drag that Shimano usually gives its baitcasters used for bass fishing. It's supposed to weigh 6.9 ounces. It does feel pretty light, but since this thing is so compact, it feels, I don't want to say heavier, but it feels more solid or more chunky for its weight. Now Shimano decided to give this thing 3 gear ratios: a 6.3, a 7.2, which is what I have, and they've also given it an extra high 8.2, and that's pretty good because Shimano is usually not one to enter the I guess the high speed wars that a lot of these companies are doing. You know, there's a 9-to-1 and 9-to-2, and then of course the Revo Rockets come out with a 10-to-1 gear ratio. Shimano's more conservative in that respect, and the fact that they've actually given one of their lower end models the extra high gear means that they're progressing, and I give them a thumbs up for that. Okay, so it's time to get to the nitty gritty and pull the scale out and get some numbers on this thing. Okay guys, I got the scale out, so just ignore those other reels in the background for now. Let's see what this thing weighs. Of course, Shimano says it's supposed to weigh 6.9 ounces. Oh, look at that. It comes in actually underweight at 6.85. And that's pretty surprising because the last few reels I've weighed have come in overweight from what the manufacturer has specified. So that's a pleasant surprise. And let's get to this spool and the brake system and the center of controversy for this reel. So to access the spool, you just flip this to open, and it's attached and it's spring loaded, which is pretty good for being only 99 bucks. And let's take a look at these brakes. Now, I mistakenly said that this was going to be the old VBS system, and I was mistaken. They're calling this VBS now. Now this has 6 brake arms that fly out, and one thing to note is 3 of them are activated, it looks like, and 3 of them are deactivated. So let me show you what the old VBS was. And to do that, I pulled out my much valued Scorpion 1000. Okay, so here's the old VBS system, or they call it SVS in Japan. So as you can see, they are very different. These feature arms that fly out, while the old system features these brake blocks that fly up. So you can see this one is activated and this one is deactivated. So whichever arms are activated, whenever you make a cast, these blocks fly out and they rub against this raceway here, right here. And it was a very simple braking system, but it was very effective. It's what they call set and forget, where you really literally didn't have to make any adjustments when changing lures of different weights. You would just get out and just start casting. Very user-friendly system, and a system a lot of the old die-hard Shimano guys wish would come back. And one thing I can see here is looks like Shimano went with a 32mm spool for the SLX. Looks like it's the same width, so this would be 32 by 22 millimeters, but it's pretty deep because they've given it the 150 line capacity. Okay, so the controversy for me at least was that Shimano did not give this the SVS Infinity of the Casitas, and I believe there is a reason for that, which I'll go over later. So I was hoping they would give this thing a very light spool to compensate for the lack of that external adjustability. So let's see what the scale says. Can't really tell, it feels kind of heavy to me. Okay, so I'm gonna zero that out. Oh shit, 15.6 grams. Let me make sure that's right. Yep, almost 15.7 grams. Now just to compare, the CG80 spool was 15.6 grams and it had the same dimensions. So that's really disappointing. Very disappointing for me. And let me show you why. The reason why is that the Casitas spool, which I've just pulled out, not only is it lighter at 15.3 grams, it's actually bigger as well. Meaning this is a 34 millimeter diameter while this is 32. And of course, Shimano has given the Casitas the SVS Infinity brakes with the external adjustment. So basically with these style of brakes, as you can see, the arms will fly closed and clamp onto this brass little cone here. Now with the SVS Infinity, you can actually move this cone in and out to give yourself more or less braking. Hopefully this camera will pick it up. So I'm going to see if I can show you guys this thing moving. Okay, so this thing is fully extended. So however many brake arms are activated, this would give the max amount of braking for that particular setting. So you can actually retract this brass cone. Hopefully this will show it. And that'll give you less braking. So I'm extending it out now. Now the movement of this thing, the travel is very short, but it does make a significant difference in braking force, just even with that small amount of travel. So that's what makes the SVS Infinity reels cast so good, is that broad range of adjustment to extract that last bit of casting out of whatever particular setting you have internally. And that's why Shimano went away from this design right here. So hopefully Shimano knows what they're doing, and maybe this thing casts as good as the Casitas. On paper it won't, because it's a smaller spool and a heavier spool with less adjustment, but I guess there's only one way to find out. So that's pretty disappointing, at least in my book. And maybe these will be set and forget as well, just like the old system. Okay guys, let's go over one more thing before I go over my final thoughts. Now, I thoroughly inspected this reel to look for any kind of quirks or characteristics, and it's a pretty basic reel. I didn't really see anything else to report about it. But the one thing that I did notice was that the thumb bar is like the Corrado K, where it goes all the way across, but it looks to be an upgrade. As you can see, the edge is shiny, but the center piece here is, I guess it's textured. It's matte, and it grabs your thumb pretty good. Now compared to the Corrado K, the thumb bar was shiny all the way around, as you can see. And it did cause a little bit of problems when it gets wet, but with this particular system, or this particular thumb bar, that should alleviate that problem because of this texturing. Of course, the thumb bar, typical Shimano, is solid. There's no kind of movement or any kind of mush or wiggle like some reels. But yeah, let's get into my final thoughts on this. Now, when Shimano said that they were going to release this SLX, and they released that video, and I found out more information about it, how it was their new $99 bait caster, and the fact that they were discontinuing the Casitas, I had mixed feelings. Now, in a sense, this thing took one step forward by giving it an aluminum frame, and it does feel a little smoother. Actually, it does feel noticeably smoother than the Casitas, turning the handle. It's got better knobs, a longer handle, but they took a big step back as well by giving it, non-adjustable brakes from the outside and a smaller, heavier spool. So they kind of stayed in place. Now, the reason why they didn't give this the SBS Infinity externally adjustable brakes is because that if you gave this reel those brakes, then no one would buy a Casitas, which is the next reel up. So yeah, that's pretty much it. They can't give you too much for 99 bucks, or you may not buy some of their more expensive reels, like maybe even the Corrado, because I always contended if they gave this Casitas an aluminum frame, the way that this thing performs, it was game over. Now it's not as smooth as the Corrado K, because of the micro gear, it's not as refined, but a lot of people don't really care about that. They just want a solid reel that's going to last with an aluminum frame and that casts well. So that's my theory as to why Shimano did not give this an aluminum frame and why they didn't give this the SBS Infinity. So on paper it looks like performance wise this is going to be a step back, but on paper versus the real world, of course, are two different things. So I'm going to take these two out on the water, throw some baits around, see if I can see a difference between the two in casting it. Then of course I'm going to take them out on the field and do some measurements. And if you guys want to see these reels battle their Daiwa counterparts like the CG80 and the Fuego, then let me know in the comments. I could do a big 4-way battle. Now, one thing that I failed to mention in the CG80 video is that Daiwa plans on keeping the Fuego in the lineup, so they're selling these two side by side even though they're the same price. Now, unfortunately, Shimano is not doing the same thing with the Casitas. And in fact, I went on Tackle Warehouse's website and this thing is gone. I thought that they would be on sale for at least a couple more months and then maybe even be discounted. And I was going to pick one up just to tune it out, but it is gone. And I looked on Bass Pro Shop's website, it is gone. Now they are available still from some other smaller retailers, so if you're wanting to pick one up, you better pick one up quick. I'm sure there's still some on eBay. But yeah, they are not selling these things side by side. This is going away. So hopefully this new SLX will fill the shoes of the Casitas, because they are some big shoes to fill indeed. So I will see you guys out on the water.
Here we come. Here we come. Here we come.